Okay, so it's a while since I've done one of these, and I guess the tools have changed, and I've learned a few new tricks. I thought I'd go again on optimizing a character creator, this time character creator 4. So I'm a VR developer, and I'm kind of really need to think about performance. So I'm just going to crunch this down from its essentially 40k triangles down to about 7 for kind of background NPCs. So I've already got shoes and a whole outfit that have been atlased, so they're using the same material. And essentially the process I'm going to do with atlasing all the different parts on the body. You see all of these are using individual materials. So the process I'm going to do with that atlasing is the same as what I did on the clothes, and I leave a comment in the on the video to point in the right direction for doing that mesh combining of all the clothes into one, because initially they were all separate, and it also makes it a lot easier if you can just create one tie outfit. These are schoolboys, so I need lots of them all wearing identical clothes. Part of the reason why I've got the shoes separate, so I can, if I really want to, give them different shoes. So some may have trainers and some black shoes, whatever. Right, enough talk. So that's already done, and you'll see that they're kind of already decimated down to something fairly sensible. So 4.5k for the clothes, 2 for the shoes. I've got a low poly hair as well on there, and then this guy who's taking like the huge chunk of everything, 37. Right, select the guy and optimize and decimate. So you might ask at this stage, why not just use all these presets? Oh, and hang on, while I do that, I'll also mention that I've changed the eyes to game eyes, teeth to game teeth, but I've actually improved them a little bit. So I did a round trip into Blender and made them just a bit nicer than the default game teeth. And it does make a big difference. So game eyes, game teeth. The tongue's the same at the moment, but it will change after I finish this next stage. So, as I was saying, you must say, why not just use these LODs, to really kind of get them down to your 7 tries. The problem I'm finding is the output from this is trash. It's really, it's an automated process, and you're really getting poor mesh deformation and just not good enough for what I need, because in VR you really do kind of notice those details on characters. So I want them to look as good as possible. I do, however, the first stage is I do an ActorBuild conversion, and the hair I'm going to have as part of the body. So then you get a few warnings. Yeah, it's kind of unavoidable, and off it goes. Okay, so at this stage ActorBuild's done a decent job, and it's got things down to, it's baked all the textures down to 2k. The problem is the character's got too many bones. So what I've done is I've created just a custom LOD template, which is essentially using the LOD 1 skeleton template, although I'm adding full facial bones because I do want to have the ability to move their eyes and mouth. but essentially it's just the foot. I do want the hands just in case, and getting rid of everything. The neck I'm keeping just because it makes it nicer for looking at the player character, the player in VR. I use realistic eye movement, or sometimes Final IK, to do a look at, so you get slightly better rotations, but everything else is left as is. I'm not doing anything, and I'm keeping my expression morphs because I'll get to that when we get to Blender. But the main thing that I'm doing here is I'm essentially reducing, I think there's 100 odd bones in the ActorBuild export, and I want that to be reduced pretty much by half. I think I end up with about 67 bones. Okay, and that's nearly it. I'm going to put him in T-pose, and with the body selected, I'm going to hide the clothes, edit mesh, faces. Don't ignore back faces because I literally want to grab all of this. Make sure you get like everything under there. So I'm just checking my hands. Yeah, that's fine. And then now I can undo that. Just gonna tidy this up. I'm essentially holding control and clicking through. I think that should be okay, and I'm going to do a bit more of the back. Oh, shift to add, not control on this. Okay, so hide. Yeah. Exit. Turn this on. Just going to have a quick peek down here just to make sure I'm not, not taking too much of it off. But they're distance characters, so it's not going to be too noticeable. Now you'll notice the hair mesh is no longer quite conforming to the shape of the head, but that's okay because I'm actually going to I can work on that. We're going to go into Blender anyway, so I might as well work on it in Blender rather than using character creators tools. But I mean, you could do that if you wanted. If you wanted, for example, to export a version from here. So I'm going to save my project so I can just have a version. Okay, if I need to go back to it. And then using Victor Soupday's exporter, export character to Blender, and I'm doing Blender to Unity, and I'm leaving everything as per default. So let's export the character. I found some of the file names are too long from character creator. Once you get into all the essentially the path of what goes on in the textures, you see how it's kind of they get longer and longer and longer, and the file names can be a bit long. That I sometimes get weird errors from character creator exports, and they're almost always for me because of this long file path. So that's why I'm kind of working in the root. And I tend to try to keep my file names consistent if I can. There we go. makes things a lot easier. Okay, save. So this is our export from Character Creator. Now in Blender, delete. I'm just going to orphan data purge. It's just good practice. It's something I've got into the habit of whenever I start working on a new project. So again, Victor Soupday is this time. This is the importer in Blender, and I'm working on this guy. And just I tend to work in the default setting. I don't need it to look like Character Creator or a fancy studio, and I find I just can see things better this way. Quick tip: if you find that these bones get in the way, like a really easy way to make them disappear is you just select the armature and hide. The rest of the character is completely fine, just because of the way the Blender works with visibility. You're only changing one item in the hierarchy, not all the children. Okay, so first thing, if I select the shoes, then the uniform, and Control J, mesh combining those. And just to be sure, I'm going to edit mode, mesh, clean up, delete loose. This gets rid of any, actually it didn't delete anything because I've done this before when I created the atlas, but it will make a difference. So I need eyes, teeth, tongue and body, and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to Control J, then this time, so you can see there's essentially the verts from the hidden meshes, or triangles I should say, from Character Creator. They're all still there. So with that selected, so mesh, clean up, delete loose, and now you've only got what you need to be working on. Now I've got a few extras down there that I don't need, so I can verts, yeah. Okay. We've cleaned up. Now we go into UV maps. I'm going to add a new UV map called SimpleBake. The name is important. We're going to use SimpleBake, which is a Blender add-on to do the baking of textures. Now, Alt A to make sure I've got everything deselected, and I'm going to grab the eyelashes. So I'm in Material, Eyelashes, Select, and then P to unparent. Exit edit mode. I'm using Tab to do that. I'm just going to rename what we've just moved over. Now the reason for doing that is the eyelashes use a transparency which the hair does as well. So what we'll do is we'll combine the materials for the eyelashes and the hair, which both have a transparency, and everything else on this body is just gonna be opaque and it's good for optimization. Also, further on in the process, we'll get rid of the eyelashes anyway, because from a distance you don't really get to see them anyway. So you'll notice that on each of those, so the eyelashes and the body, they're all still kind of referencing those materials that we don't need. So it's gonna, I'm on the body, delete the eyelashes on here, and also you'll notice we have no legs, so we don't need the legs material either. And on the eyelashes, we literally just want that eyelash material. Okay, so select our body again, tab to go into edit mode, and now we're gonna essentially work on the UVs. I'm in UV edit mode, and so as I mentioned, everything currently is kind of on these 2K textures. That we want to reorganize the islands. Essentially we're doing our own, so you can see they're kind of overlapping, so if you were to bake everything down you just wouldn't get a nice result. And what we're going to work towards is this. We're just kind of reorganizing things, and then we'll bake it down. Let me show you an example of what it looks like when it's baked. So rather than getting all the individual parts, you're baking it down into a texture atlas, single 2K, actually I baked down to 4K, simple 4K version. Okay, single map, single text, single material, and good for optimization. Alright, so let's work towards that. Alt A, deselect. So I've done this before, as you notice, you can see, so I'm just working from that as a reference. I'm just going to move things across as I go. So the arms actually stay in the same place, so that's okay. And then the body, and literally you can just drag across and then G for grab and just move things around. So I'm gonna start following my example. Okay. Head. So the other thing you can do, I'm just selecting vertices there, shift select, and then control L, which selects linked, and then G, and I can move this out of the way. Now this, just I know again because I've done this before, I just scale things, so S 0.5, so it halves the size of that, and then everything else scale 0.75 for this one, grab, and I just put it in the top. Gets tucked in here. Okay, and if you want to just as you go, just double check. Yeah, fine. That's all fine. Okay. Moving on. So we've done the head. Select the nails. Nails scale 0.25. They're big because they essentially were on a 1K texture originally. Grab. I tuck them up at the top. Tongue. Again, it's a 1K texture originally. A. Select all. Scale. 0.125. It's way bigger than we need it to be. It kind of tucks in here. Teeth. Select. Scale 0.25. Again, this will vary depending on your character, but I guess if you're using Character Creator, it will be the same UV map, so you'll be in the right ballpark anyway. Select. And this goes scale 0.5, but I am gonna have to tuck it on the side for now and just select everything else. Just make sure, so this is where that Control L comes in handy. This guy's kind of not quite fitting, so you can, there's nothing to stop you like rotating things if it helps. Grab, move him a bit higher. Control L again, G for grab. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so now I've got my eyes. I'm just S and then just doing the scale by hand. Yeah, that's pretty good. So ideally I want them as big as I possibly can. My thinking is, you know, the eyes should be about the same on the UV map for the atlas as, you know, the face. Keep sadly the body's a little bit lower than ideally I would want to, but I'm just, yeah, it's really only this part of yeah, it's only really body select. Yeah, this part, it's alright, that doesn't show too much if it's slightly lower resolution. Okay, so now we've got our, do Control A, just last final check, margins around everything, looks good. It's gonna move that around just a little bit. Okay. At this stage, I tend to save the blend file, and there's probably a good reason for doing that as well, because we're going to start working in SimpleBake. The SimpleBake is a paid add-on, but it's not stupid price. I don't know, it's $20 or something. I'll leave a link in the description. But it essentially automates the process of baking down maps in Blender and makes just life so much easier. I'd say if you're doing this kind of work, it's indispensable, and it needs the Blender file to be saved. So yeah. again, I'm just keeping the same naming strategy. Okay. One of the nice things it has are these presets. So once you've done one and you're happy with your settings, you just have to click on this tick box, loads it back up again, and it knows already that that's the game body. I can go through the settings just quickly so you know how I've set it up, but it's essentially in PBR bake, so that's what I'm choosing. I'm choosing a PBR bake. First of all I selected this, clicked add so it appears here, then open the PBR bake section, and you choose essentially what maps you want to bake out. And you can, like Unity will prefer a glossy rather than rough, but then it won't look right in Blender while you're working on it. And also I'm not sure what happens with the Victor Soupday exporter, whether it gets confused. I think it's expecting a Blender material. So what I've done is I am keeping with rough. Normal map, OpenGL is what Unity uses. Specular, I don't think it's actually being used, but hey, it might as well have it. And because this is going to be opaque, I don't need an alpha. I'm baking out the ambient occlusion as well. But one of the things because of that, so let me so I'll show the uniform again. So you'll get kind of some shadowing around the neck. It just, you know, little details, but it makes it look a little bit nicer. But because of that, you need to hide the eyelashes and the haircut. Otherwise, those, I think, from previous tests, especially even the transparency on the hair seems to kind of affect some of the tinting on the forehead. So I've just got into the habit of just hiding those. There is a setting in here, if I can find it somewhere, which is to essentially disable any objects that aren't baked object. Oh, there you are. Isolate objects from each other during bake. So essentially it would hide everything apart from what you're baking, and it's what I'm doing here. But it would also, in this case, it would hide the uniform, which I do want. I do want that slight shadowing from the, say, the collar line, for example. So you know, you can use that if you want, but personally I don't mind doing it by hand. So I'm baking out ambient occlusion. The texture settings, it's up to you. You could, I guess, go down to 2K, but I don't have a problem doing that in Unity. I'd rather have high resolution maps and have a choice later to halve their size, you know, for memory management. So I bake everything at 4K. You can, if you want, up the bake out, like up. So you could go up to an 8K bake that would then be output at 4K. So in theory, it would improve aliasing. But for what I'm doing, I'm working from what were originally 2K maps. So I think I'm fine keeping those both at 4K. They're on my settings, and then I'm exporting the bakes to their default folder, which is just going to be in the root of the project. And this is why you have to save your project first, your Blender project. Format ping's fine for me. Sorry, PNG. Now there's the important difference to what I think the defaults are. New UV maps. So you can use new UV maps. Essentially it uses Blender's own smart UV project, so it will unwrap everything for you, but you're not going to get a nice looking atlas like this. It's kind of it's a mess, to be honest. For a character with a face, you get like bits of the face all over the place. So I would really recommend in this case. So all we did is, if you remember, we went in here and we added a UV map called SimpleBake, and it's what's used down here. So prefer existing UV map called SimpleBake. So that's what it's going to use. It'll make sense with press bake. You can use batch names to essentially do this kind of background baking, and you can stack them up and then just go and make yourself a cup of coffee. Personally, I don't mind waiting for it happening, but something worth knowing is unless you've changed the default preferences, that batch name ends up in your texture files, and I find it just adds too much. That's why I tend to leave that as an underscore or change that to an underscore, because it's these file names become just too big. And definitely copy objects and apply bakes needs to be ticked on. That means that your original is going to get copied. It'll have the new texture, the new material applied to it, and the original will be disabled. Again, you'll see it in a second. Yeah, hide source. And that's it. I'm going to stay on the CPU for now. You don't have a choice of using the GPU, but just because I'm screencasting, I think it's probably safer just to get it baked on the CPU. The other thing is channel packing. You've got a choice of essentially creating kind of, like what Unity uses for its specular and metallic workflows. You'll get your metallic on RGB channels, and then in the Unity case, it's not roughness, it's the glossiness, the invert of that. But I'm exporting to OpenEXR, and then I can open it in Unity later and just fix that, just invert the alpha channel. And I don't want to delete the bakes after the channel pack. If I do that, it'll create my my metal with a rough alpha, and then it'll delete the files that were created here. So it would delete roughness, and I don't want that to happen. I prefer keeping them as files. And that's it. So yeah, so if you've done all of that and you followed those settings and you're intending to use it again, then you just write in a name, click the heart button, and that will save it as a preset. And yeah, I'm going to do a foreground bake, just bake, and enjoy the show. I'm definitely going to have to speed this up because it does take a little while, but it's kind of nice to watch. Okay, so that's done. Now the observant amongst you will notice that my occlusion map is all the ambient occlusion map shows essentially the hair, and that's because I stupidly forgot to disable in renders. So it's not just the visibility, but it's also in the renders as well. So I'm going to rebake, but just so that kind of you see what the output is, it's all these lovely atlas textures. That's the metal rough packed, but I'm just gonna essentially just go again because of the setting. Clear existing bake images before bake. I can just do that. It's hidden in refo, so object CC base body. Oh, cool. So I need to actually go back. So if you get what I've done, if you've made the mistake I've made and you need to backtrack, so there's a thing so you delete that one and then show that again. Yeah, should be good. Back and bake. Right, second time lucky. You see much better ambient occlusion map without these, so you can put them back and your results end up in this collection. It's still on a wide, it's blue, it's like a reference I think, because it's there but it shows here, and so all you do is you literally pick it up, drag it into the collection, and then it just you can select that and delete, and it just moves it to back inside your armature. And this is the original. Just to prove my point, there are all the different on the original, those materials, and then on this guy just a single material using these textures. Now if you're observing, you might have noticed this is kind of a bit weird. I mean it's in there in the original, but it leads to this kind of weird distortion around the nose of characters. It really bugs me. So as a bonus tip, if you go image, edit externally, you'll have to in Blender preferences set whatever your editor of choice is. Or I guess you could fix it as well in texture paint. I just tend to use Photoshop because I find it a bit easier to use. Well, I know it. So you're probably not meant to do this. You know, people who know normal maps really well can probably bulk at this, but you can. You know, it's like it's just a texture like any other. And what I tend to do is I use the clone tool. To just ease that out. So anything that's kind of jagged like that, is what gives you the, yeah, I'll do just do a little bit there, as long as it looks kind of, I mean these are not hero characters, they don't have to be like absolutely perfect. I'm not seeing any problems on the eyelids, so I'm just going to leave it as so save and close, and then you'll see nothing until you go to image, reload, and it just eases out those jagged things. And then if you want to kind of go the whole hog, then you obviously will want to change, also edit. Okay, same again, reload. I probably have overdone it there, because I've done, yeah, probably so once the ambient occlusion map gets added, you probably wouldn't have a problem with that, but I'm just gonna I'm holding Alt, and it allows you to move up and down to change the opacity, and then left and right. Just a little Photoshop trick. Okay, standing that back in. Make it look a little bit more natural. Okay, that'll do. Right, now we need to take care of these guys. We're still in UV editing, that's fine. And they also need SimpleBake UV, and got a preset for them, which I'll load. So it knows I want to get the eyelashes and the hair mesh. Pretty much getting the same maps, but in addition the alpha. I found when you're doing an alpha like this, you do need a transparent background, because otherwise it kind of doesn't overlay them. You end up with only when you've got two objects. And next change to what we had before was multiple objects to one texture set. So I'm not going to combine the objects, I just want them to both use the same material. Because originally they were just like literally 1K maps. I'm just keeping the same. Again, export the bakes, and this time I've got essentially diffuse for the RGB, and then the alpha channel in the alpha channel, because that's what Unity will use in its material slot for a transparent material. I'm also doing metal rough, just why not, you know. But before we can press bake on this one, we need to do the same process of actually changing the UV islands, because we don't want them to overlap. So we're going to edit mode. I'll change this to something. So that's the eyelashes, that's the hair. Now the hair, is this, and I don't know from experience, just because of this mesh, I don't know if it's because I've kind of optimized it as much as I could previously. I found that if I change its size, you get some issues essentially around the seams up at the top where it's kind of stretched, which is around here, and I get some weird kind of stuff happening there. So I've learned just with this one, with my kind of hair mesh as it were, not to mess around with the size. I'm just going to keep it exactly where it is, but I do want to change the eyelashes. So let me select, because I need them to essentially get tucked. So A, Control Alt, and then tuck them underneath somewhere. Okay. So obviously make sure that you're on SimpleBake, not channel 0, because that's what you're wanting to change. You're changing the islands on SimpleBake. Okay. Exit edit mode. Went through all of these settings. I could just go bake. Okay, so that's quite a lot faster because they're only 1K bakes. But one thing I do want to change on this is, again, you might, that's the kind of weird stuff that I've been, yes, what I'm going to do is show you my problem is just this seam here is just a bit poor, shall we say. Yeah, that's where the problem's appearing. So my fix. This is again just probably down just to my, I can just paint some extra white. This is the alpha. You would have to change that also in the your packed file. So the diffuse alpha. In fact, let's do that now. Open with Photoshop. And then also there's some issues. I found that the island is just the original. So let's go. Yeah, so I got that one opened. Save, which is my texture painting, but I'm going to open diffuse. I'm going to go edit externally, and then I also want the original, which I just happen to know is called. You see, and it extends way beyond what the SimpleBake does. I'm just going to grab that, copy, Shift Control V for paste in place, and that's fine. And then I've got this. I'm going to do the same on that. This is the packed one, the PBR diff. So Shift Control V. Yeah, all done. Save. No. So Shift Control E for merge everything down, and then I can do save back to what Blender expects. And same with this, Shift Control E, save. And I don't need that, that was just the original. Okay, so I need go back to my, what are they called? So if you can't remember, then the texture, just literally in here, and shading. So that's what it's the material that a SimpleBake has created, the diffuse. There it is. So it's still showing the original. I need to go into image, reload. There you are. That updates the work that I did in Photoshop. Right, back to our normal layout, and that kind of fixes that weird seam thing problem. Now, I just want to now at this stage I can fix the issue of the hair mesh not conforming quite well enough with the shape of the head. Now you need to do this. I'm going to use the sculpting tool for that, and it needs to be done outside of the armature. If you've got it in here and working on it there, you won't be able to do what I need to. I'll show you what I mean. So if I move this in, move the eyelashes in, delete the bakes, delete the originals because we don't need those. They're now using that Atlas material. So okay, so we got body, baked, yeah, okay. So if I try going to sculpt mode, what I'm doing, clicking, nothing happens. So I'm going to go into the history, go back, and I think it's because of the bone weights. It's just not being allowed to be affected. So it's not a problem. You just literally object, parent, clear and keep transform, so it just brings it out. And then go to, let's have a look. So yeah, ideally I would want to, I was going to use like sculpt mode here, but I'm not sure if that's, yeah. The sculpt modes can be good for some things, but like these little bits just there at the back, that's fine. But it's affecting almost too much of the rest of it, and there aren't too many hang on, too many, like if there were vertices along here then it would just lift it up, but that's not quite what I need, so I'm actually going to do it in this mode. What's the best way? Select that. Going to move it on the normal. Grab Z. It's literally going up on it. Okay, should be fine. And while I'm here, I might as well just delete a few of those extra unnecessary faces. See, there's one there as well. I'll keep those just because there's the right, and then so it's still got the armature, so I can just literally, if I turn that on and go select the hair, select the armature, object, parent object. If it didn't have the armature, then you would do object, parent, armature deform. That would get it back. Okay, so we fixed all of that. And we packed the hair, so we're good. We'll just file save as, I'll call that baked high Q. So that's essentially kind of a high, and you could from here go export to Unity and you would have, yeah, so kind of a recap of what we've done. We went from character creator, we've kept the ActorBuild kind of deformation on the body, but we've atlased all of those materials into one, and we did that additional conversion, so got rid of some of the bones, so we're only dealing with 65 bones. If you've got good eyesight, you can see it from here, which kind of essentially gets rid of a lot of the things like twist bones and unnecessary bones that we didn't need. What we do still have are, if I go to the body, and also I guess the hair stuff that we don't need, shape keys. So I'm going to get rid of the shape keys for the hair, and the eyelashes have all the shape keys, same as the body. So that means that you can, like if you export it now, you'll have kind of a fairly low poly character with all your shape keys, but you've made some wins on optimization on the atlasing of materials. There's something to be said for actually what the atlasing that we did on just the body could have been done on the body and the clothes. You could have ended up with a single opaque material that did both body and clothes, but the reason I'm not is simply because lots of my characters have this same uniform, and I can then do some further optimizations in Unity based on that. So all my characters will share one clothes material, but they're only swapping for the faces, for the bodies. So that's just a personal optimization, but you could have essentially done what we did on both of those. And the reason I've got these separate still is because I'm about to delete it. But for now I might as well just do an export of, I guess we'll call it, so it's actually, according to to Unity, we're not at 20k, we're now down to, I'm going to say 15k. Okay, yeah, I'll just call it that. Yep, export done. Right, so we're saved, we've done our export. Now the next stage, so we're talking initially of doing a 7k character. So at that stage you're not going to need eyelashes, so we delete those. Then I'm gonna use an add-on called Cats, which was developed by the VR chat community. It's quite old, but it still works. It still does useful things. One of them is decimation while preserving blend shapes. Here we go. So if I do what I was about to do using decimate, I would lose all of those shape keys, blend shapes. I will get rid of them eventually, or at least I'll certainly reduce them again for performance optimization, but I want to have at least that choice. So I'm going to use Cats to do that, and using the smart setting, or decimate, but keep shape keys. It will work on the entire armature. So what I want to do is to do what we did before and unparent that hair, because I don't want the hair to be any further decimated. It's really low poly already, but I want the rest of the body to be done, so that's good. It's just going to essentially combine everything. So where do we want to go? So my hair is 755. I'm kind of looking for a target of about 7,000, so I can make that, yeah, 6,000 plus the hash. We'll make it about, these are just presets. It's essentially what you would get in VR chat. So if you click on those, it'll set that to what it wants. 6.2. That's what I want. Okay, quick decimation. Done. Merge everything into a single mesh called body, which has the bake body material and the school uniform material, and yeah, it's not bad at all. My texture map has some kind of darkness around the lips, but that's actually from it was the character creator face plugin, whatever, originally, so that's where it comes from. The headshot plugin, you can kind of, that's originally in there. I'll probably fix it in Photoshop if it becomes too much of an issue. But we now have a character at just under 7K, looking pretty great actually, I would say, for its, and I find it's worth looking. We're just making sure, so I might have some fixing to do on here. So somehow we've lost a face. I'm not sure why, but that's okay. So select those. F for fill. Not sure why that happened, but that's okay. You can see there's a little bit, just not quite. So obviously we've reduced the number of polys on the face, so that's possibly going to affect one, 2 and 3 are the different modes, in case you're wondering what I'm pressing to change. Okay, so I'm really happy with that. File, save as. Same place, yeah, low Q. Now I could do at this stage an export to Unity, but actually I need to reparent that, don't I? So you select the hair, then the destination, object, parent, save. But this body has just got way more blend shapes that I need for a character who's probably just going to be like a distant character. I can open and close its mouth, but I'm not going to see the tongue move, and I'm not going to be that bothered about that. So I'm just going to essentially get rid of yeah, and things like head backwards it's like the full set of blend shapes or expressions from character creator that are just not going to be needed. So head, neck tighten, don't need, tongue, mouth possibly, but not chin up. Mouth. So at this stage you've got kind of a choice. If you're going to do some expressions, I actually, yeah, lose that, but I'm going to keep some of my mouth shapes just so I can do, you know, like kind of frowns from a distance. So it's partly to do with the application that I'm going to be using this in. I'm going to need them to be able to do a little bit, but there's still like too much. That's the full like AR kit, puckers and funnel and dimple. So it's kind of up to you. You can go like, if you need absolute optimization, and in fact possibly for this guy I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go delete all of those, keep not even the smiles. Now I'm just going to, for this one, because I've saved it, I can go back to this. So don't need Nose, don't need, definitely don't need ears. The eyelashes are all gone, so definitely not needed. And I'm just literally going to keep the eye blinks, so I can just do a bit of blinking. And importantly, make sure you keep basis, because that's essentially the default for your character. Without that, everything else falls apart. So just keeping eye blink, mouth closed is just a kind of a useful for when Unity has an issue with the character creator rig. And I don't need contract, so I've reduced all my shape keys down to just 3 essentially. Hair has none, don't need any, and I'm good. So file, save as, so minimum blend shapes. And export to Unity. So exported, done. So now in Unity, it's one I did earlier. I've been doing some character tests. I'm going to need a lot of these guys in my school, so that's why I'm doing this. Okay, there were the bakes that have come out. Just going to do just to keep things consistent. Going to create a folder. And you don't strictly need the SimpleBakes folder because it's got some stuff you're not going to need, but it has, what it does have is the hair. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So this is the URP importer. So because it's come via Blender, not straight out of Character Creator, I find that the rig type is not usually recognized, but we are dealing with a humanoid rig. I'm going to keep high quality materials, but I don't need anything fancier for the eyes and the hair. On import, this little normal matte thing turns up. You go, yeah, fixed now. Build the materials. Okay, and then just essentially compile things down into this baked prefab. And first thing you notice is that conversion didn't do the hair. So the hair is metallic opaque, and it's also using just that diffuse, not the baked diffuse with alpha that we created in SimpleBake. So transparent. I'm going to render face just the front. Don't need any alpha clipping, and change over to this. And now we've got the hair as we expect it. Also have to change, that's the hair, that's fine. So these guys, I've got a school uniform already. I should, so I'll do is I'll go. That's essentially shared, and it's going to be shared amongst all of them. So I've got characters, shed. Hang on. So take. Yeah, this guy, body, school uniform. Just to make things a bit easier. I'm going to grab this. Shelf is a asset that just lets you bookmark kind of folders. Quick nav is another one, but similar things. Okay, so body. So he's going to use the same material as that guy. I did do some work on the metallic, opaque, both. Okay, so what's this guy doing? I went simple lit. And use the specular map. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, fine. So remember, these are like NPCs, like background. They're not like characters you're going to interact with. They're going to walk past and be in the distance. And yeah, I mean, that's the full round trip of taking this guy from here with his, initially it was at 40,000 triangles. I did, so as you might have noticed in Unity, I got a bunch of previous characters, so I did some testing. They're all initially, I thought, I'll just export them as ActorBuild with that 20k settings, essentially this character, and it just was not running in VR. I just didn't have enough performance. But going through this process and essentially baking everything down to like atlasing it, the bodies, we're using the same school uniform. I'll be using Mesh Baker to combine these skin meshes, so I end up with only one skin mesh that's sharing all these materials and an atlas of all the faces. So that will be the next stage, but probably overstayed my welcome already. I hope that's useful. As usual, this is just a note for myself going through it. But yeah, by the way, that those blend shapes for the eye blinks are still there. They're not, it's not going to be perfect, but again, it's just literally from a distance. You could fix those if you needed to in Blender, but for what I'm doing, it's just literally going to give me a little bit of kind of an option to do some procedural blinking, and you could, I could have chosen to keep a few more of those for maybe characters who are a bit closer to the camera. Alright, hope that's useful. See you on the next one.